Hello, this is Sky News' daily podcast. I'm Beth Rigby, Sky News' political editor. Now, normally my podcast life is electoral dysfunction with Conservative peer Ruth Davidson and Labour's Jess Phillips. Of course, we're talking about the election campaign every episode, so if you like your politics, do give us a try. We're into all the big stories, of course, but we also like a few political rabbit holes to forage in as well. Currently, we're doing pets who are named after politicians, so if that floats your boat, give us a listen. We're trying to collect pet pictures. Listen to the podcast and you'll find out how to get hold of us. Today, though, I'm doing a mini takeover of the daily podcast, and we've got a really big interview for you. It's Labour Deputy Leader and the woman who wants to be your Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. She's not done many interviews since the investigations into her living arrangements were splashed all over the front pages. But for this podcast, on the day the campaign officially starts, we spoke for about 20 minutes about what's been going on with Angie Rayner. Here's that interview. Well, look, Angie, thanks for joining us today. I wanted to talk to you about what's happened to you the past few months. You were investigated by the police, Stockport Council and HMRC over the sale of your council house in 2015. They've all dropped the investigations and you're cleared. You said you want to draw a line on it under it. Did you feel really tremendously relieved when that happened? How did it feel?
It's there was a relief, but it was more of a frustration because I was confident from the start that I hadn't done anything wrong. And it was disbelief that it was going on and gathering this momentum that it was gathering. And it was a distraction from what I like to do. You know, people don't want to hear about my council house from before as an MP. People are really concerned about the fact that they can't get housing, and that's obviously within my brief. So it deliberately distracted from the issues that I wanted to raise on behalf of the people of this country. So it was a bit bittersweet for me because I just felt like I'd lost a lot of time where I could have been. You know, I felt like my wings had been clipped for me to be able to raise those issues.
You were sort of benched, weren't you? In fact, you've been benched, really, haven't you?
Well, the challenge
months.
we had, I mean, I was determined to go out and continue campaigning, and, you know, Keir and the Shadow Cabinet were incredibly supportive. But it was frustrating because every time I was out on the media, everybody wanted to talk about my housing, wanted to talk about the disaster of what's happening in housing at the moment. They wanted to talk about what was happening with me. And I felt that. And I felt that I was becoming a distraction from the message. And the frustration for me is that, you know, I just felt that there was so much going wrong for people that when these stories about MPs constantly, then it looks like we're all in it for ourselves or we're all doing bad things. And I knew I hadn't done that. And I just felt that it gave the wrong message when people's mortgages have gone up, rents have gone up. We had the Renters Reform Bill, we had the Leasehold Bill going through Parliament. Instead of dealing with those issues and being able to challenge them effectively, I was in effect clipped from doing that.
And you just said then, you know, because you said, I remember in April, you said when a police investigation was launched into this, you said, if I'm found guilty of breaking the law, I will resign. Now, you said just now you were confident that you hadn't done anything wrong. You said that throughout. You can say I'm confident, but you can't know. Was that quite a difficult thing to say and do? Were you worried that you... Because once you've said it, if they find anything wrong, you're gone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and I knew it was the right thing to do because Keir has made it absolutely clear that the Labour Party is a change party and for the service of the country. You can't turn around to the country and say, I'll break the law and then I'll just carry on. You can't do that. You know, people have to have confidence in that you are going to abide by the law that we are enacting and that we're going to do the right thing.
You can't have known that you would have been cleared.
Well, I was confident that I'd not done anything wrong because the idea that the police were investigating me. You know, the estate I grew up on was quite a rough estate where I grew up. And, you know, for the police to be, that's like quite a thing for a working class person to have the police onto you. It taints you. It's like, gosh, am I a bad person? And people think, oh, she's up to no good. And that was difficult because I've always tried to do do the right thing. I've never tried to, I've never been in trouble with the law.
So you felt
I
like
might
I'm
have
in
been
trouble.
before I was 16. I did shoplift once, but to caveat that.
Did it feel shaming for you then in that sense?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And for my family, because we are a family that have all tried to do the right thing and play by the rules. Playing by the rules was important to me, and I've always tried to do that.
So just to explain to the listener, Angie, what was going on? What were your living arrangements back then?
Well, I don't want to go into great detail, but, my husband's 17 years older than me, and his house he inherited from his mum and dad. They lived there. I mean, I think they bought it under right to buy in 1991. I didn't know this, by the way, because that was my husband's house. It was his mum and dad's house. So as far as I'm concerned, that was his mum and dad's house.
Yeah.
So it was his home. It was what he inherited off his mum and dad. And I had my house that I got when I was a single mum with Ryan, and it mattered to me. It was a big deal. It was my security. And, I talked about my past, and, I never felt secure when I was a child. I never felt safe, and I never felt that, my mum and dad were on benefits. They were not able to provide for me. So for me to be in a position to provide for my son and to get that house, it was a massive deal. So when me and Mark, got together, we always had separate finances. In fact, we joked about the fact that, bearing in mind I was a single mum working as a home help on a very low wage, Mark was a manager in his mum and dad's inherited house. So you can see how some would look at it thinking, 17 years, this ain't going to last. She's only with you for your this, that, the other. So I had this sense of pride of, actually, I'm my own person. I don't need anyone else. So my relationship with Mark was never about, joining that up. In fact, we used to joke about it because Mark said, if you need anything, when I got pregnant with the children, he said, if you need anything, just ask. So when I became a member of Parliament, I said to him, if you need anything, just ask. I made the joke about it, but I've always been fiercely proud of my own independence. So I had never any dealings with Mark's property. I didn't know a thing about the sale of it. It was his. I only moved in, I think it was just the end of 2014. So I was there for a good 14, 16 months before I moved to Ashton-on-the-Lyne in the April. I mean, it'll blow people's mind. My ex-husband, we've been divorced, we've been separated for a long time. He still lives in the house. We're divorced, we have separate finances, but he lives in the house now and helps me look after the children.
And that house has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, but they've never been... We've always had separate finances.
You're used to it, Angie. You're used to the political knockabout, being in the public eye, being under fire, but your family are not. And suddenly Mark is being hounded. Your son's birth certificate is put online. You said it was totally unacceptable and your family deserves some privacy. How difficult was that for you?
It was really difficult. And Mark wanted... he's, like I say, he's a lot older than me. That was his mum and dad's house. He was born in that house. He wanted his children, if they look at the records, for the historical family records, he wanted his children so that my name, because my maiden name was on the birth certificate because I wasn't married, he wanted the names to be the same, and for his birth address where he was born, where his family were from before, he wanted the children to have that record. So that's why that was done. There was no fiddle or anything like that. It was purely because he wanted this record for his children. Well, obviously that was blown apart by all of this, because then the children now know anyway but that's not what he wanted for his children. The frustration for me was that it was almost like dragging over our family circumstances and passing a lot of judgment on it. So we're two very working class people that want to provide for our children, and that's why we're unconventional now, where we live together but we're divorced, because our number one priority has always been about providing for the children.
For the kids. Did it cause difficulties in your personal relationships where suddenly everyone that is around you in your life but not in the public eye are now all being hassled?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had this challenge really, because I spoke to my mum many times because I've always spoken about my mum's challenges she had, and my brother and sister, because if I talk about my childhood, I'm talking about their childhood as well. So, and they're not in the public eye, as you say. So I've always been very conscious about what I say, but also trying to be honest with the public so they get a sense of where my politics come from, why I do what I do and why I say what I say. So that is challenging. I think it's more challenging for me when, it's like the Boris Johnson Leggate story. I had to sit my 2 teenage sons down and say that there's this story coming out saying that I try and distract the Prime Minister with my legs.
Yeah, this was about, just to explain to people, this was a story that was in the paper suggesting that you wore a skirt at PMQs and then crossed and uncrossed your legs to try and distract the then Prime Minister, and then you have to explain that to your
to my
teenage
sons that I'm not doing that sort of behaviour, and it's stuff like that I really don't like, because it's not nice on them. And again, with this story, there was a suggestion that I'm some sort of criminal, and friends and family were concerned for me more than anything, because the people who know me know that I literally, I'm not perfect, but I always try and do the right thing.
Like, you've talked a bit about it being shaming. Did you feel quite anxious? Like you were being put into this bucket of someone under investigation by the police. Like, that's not who I am. Did it make you feel quite anxious?
I felt frustrated, because I was like, everyone knows the situation with public services at the moment, and I'm like, well, hang on a minute. I was hearing all these things in the press. I wasn't aware of what the investigation was entailing, how many people. But I was hearing all these things about I was being investigated by up to 12 police officers. I'm like, this is wild.
Do you want an apology from the Conservatives about it?
I just think, this is a playbook that they've deployed more than once now. They did it in the West Midlands mayoral just before the close of ballot, and they did it, with Durham. They've done it before, and they've done it on this. It seems to be that the Conservatives think this is a deploy that they can use in the campaign. I think that's disgraceful, and I don't think that's what politics should be about.
And you talked a bit about Mark, your ex-husband, and your kids being brought into it, and your brother too. Your brother was at some points living at your house.
He did, but my brother at the time, he'd served in Iraq. He'd come back. He'd had some challenges, shall we say, and he was a young single man who was staying at Mark's house. When I'd go to Mark's for the weekend, because after Mark renovated his house, I mean, when Mark got that house, it was the same as it had been for his mum. Ever since when his mum died, it had not changed. I mean, the whole place was as it was. So I helped him renovate it so he can help me with the children, because I said, I can't do it all by myself. He wasn't living with me. So when he renovated that house, he was there. And when I'd spend weekends there, my brother would be at Vicarage Road, because I'd say, look after my house, because he had sash windows. There were old sash windows, and I thought, well, I don't want my house getting robbed, because I didn't have a house alarm, and there were the old sash windows. So when I was at Lowndes Lane with Mark,
but he's not paying you rent, and
he wasn't paying me rent or anything. Yeah. No, he was my brother. He was just staying.
How difficult was it for your brother when suddenly he's trying to live his life and he's getting doorstepped and hounded by the press, he's on camera?
It's horrible. He's not. He's not in the press. He's not in the public eye. He's got a family of his own, and they've got their own challenges. And it wasn't nice for them going through all of that. And I feel a sense of, I feel a sense of regret that I put my family through this, but they also know that I'm trying to do some good.
Did you ever think, I can't be doing this, and I'm going to step out?
I think the closest, and I didn't feel this, certainly not through this, but the closest I ever got to that point, and I didn't think I'll step out, but I had to have a conversation, was with my eldest son when Joe Cox was murdered. Yes. And he rang me up, and my children were very worried, and my eldest son said, Mum, is it worth it? And I had to explain to him why I think it was. But, my children have had to see the levels of threat that MPs get, and a lot of MPs get it. You get it. Women in positions of power and influence do get that. And I think that's had a unnecessary burden on my friends and family, because they that always concerns them.
And just so finally on this, so you've been benched a bit, but you're back.
I'm back, and I'm on powering up the battle bus.
Have you got your own battle bus?
I have got a battle bus.
Has it got your name on the side?
You'll have to wait and see. I'll let you on it.
Okay, so you've got your own battle bus.
I've got
an Angela Rayner battle bus is about to be unleashed.
An Angela Rayner battle bus. Yes.
Wow.
You're going to love it.
I'm coming on it.
It's got a fridge.
Full of water, probably. Just needing
Absolutely.
to rehydrate constantly.
To hydrate after speaking all the time.
Well, look, you're going to get on your battle bus. It's been put to bed. But I wanted to ask you about something else going on in Labour at the moment, which is about Diane Abbott. There is a lot of... It's very messy. Should she be able to stand as a Labour MP, Angie? What do you think?
I don't think there's any reason why Diane can stand as a Labour MP. Look, she's gone through a process, and that's right, and I wasn't involved in that process because we have a complaints procedure and there was a concern raised. She apologised. As far as I've seen, that has been dealt with. The whip has told her that she's back on the whip, so she's back a member of the Labour Party, Parliamentary Labour Party. I don't see any reason why she can't be a Labour MP if that's what she wants to do.
Is that what you would like to see
I'd like to see Diane go on her terms if she wants to, or if she wants to stay, then she should be able to stay. Diane's been a trailblazer, 37 years, first black female MP in Parliament, and she's shown people like me that you can be yourself. Like, can you imagine that when she walked into Parliament, she was the only face that looked like her? Can you imagine? I mean, it's challenging for someone like me to be in there from a working class background. Can you imagine how that was for Diane and what she's had to endure over that period? But she hasn't. She's been an inspiration for many. You don't have to agree with her politics, and me and Diane have famously disagreed on policy before now when I was in the shadow cabinet with her. But you've got to respect that she is a formidable representative for her constituents, and she's been an inspiration to many people who see that actually she has trailblazed, and now people from her background and people who look like her have a place in our politics, and she's been able to demonstrate that by you can see the difference on our benches.
Claire Short said that she'd been treated unforgivably. Jess Phillips said to me yesterday, like you did, she'd be allowed to stand. Is it troubling you the way it's been handled?
I think, you know, what troubles me is these anonymous briefings, and I've had my fair share of these briefings, and I can tell you that Keir absolutely despises them. He is like I've always said that Keir is like the ultimate professional. He's like the ultimate civil servant. He doesn't like anything that looks trashy. He's not that type of person. So I know that he will be as frustrated as I am with these briefings. It doesn't help anyone, and it's very disrespectful to Diane, and it's disrespectful to any of our colleagues if people think it's okay to brief against them. They are elected. Diane is an elected member of Parliament, and she should be treated with some respect.
Andrew Fisher, who worked with Jeremy Corbyn, said, is it racism, sexism, factionalism, or a combination of all? He's also talking about Faiza Shaheen, who's also just been deselected in Chingford. He said, either way, it looks appalling. Has he got a point, Angie? Is this looking sexist, racist? Like, it's not a great look for the Labour Party, is it?
It's not a great look with the way Diane was briefed against. In terms of the wider picture, we have a very robust process in place now for vetting. Keir said that we would make sure that we raise the bar for our candidates, and we've done that. And there's been a number of candidates from different backgrounds and different factions that have not been able to get through that vetting process, and people always get angry when that happens. But I do think that the way in which people briefed against Diane, I think that was totally unacceptable.
Do you think it's a purge of the left? Because that's what Diane said last night. I think he's trying to purge the left. You are of that wing of the party. You're there in a way to keep him honest, right, Keir?
Yeah, I don't think Keir is acting in a factional way. You do have factions in the Labour Party. You get it in all political parties. But, you know, our party will only succeed if we're a broad church. And that means that actually we welcome people who didn't vote for us in 2019. Absolutely do, because we need to show them that the Labour Party is a change party. But equally, you know, we have diverse opinions across the whole political spectrum. And, I come from the trade union background. Some people call that a faction, some people don't. But I come from a trade union background. But ultimately, Keir said our number one focus as a party cannot be about party. It has to be about country.
And he said to me in an interview recently, I said to him, are you ruthless? And he did not even blink. He said, yes, I'm ruthless because I want a Labour government. Other people look at this and think it's ruthless because he is trying to get rid of left-wing candidates who might not just toe the Keir Starmer line after the election. Is he ruthless?
Well, I think he's ruthless in the sense of, he wants to be governing for the country, and that's what's important to him. I think he's also ruthless in saying that people have to abide by the rules and people have to have high standards, and he's made that very, very clear, and that we're a changed Labour Party. But I also think that he doesn't see that there's not room for different opinions. I mean, you can see that by the defections that have come into Labour. You can see that about, reaching out to other voters.
My final question to you is, it has been... Diane did a big rally in Hackney by the town hall last night. I live in that community, and I actually bumped into a couple of people on the bus in today. They were asking me about Diane. Yeah. They said they didn't think it looked right. You've always been on the side of voters. I think that's, you talk about how you want to be in the party to represent working class people. Do you think that the leadership should climb back down the ladder on this, let her stand, not alienate people who think, whether rightly or wrongly, that this is trying to push out a left-wing black woman from the party? Do you think that they need to bring her back in?
Well, I know that Keir wouldn't want to interfere with blocking or not, and I know that Keir was on Sky yesterday, and he said that as far as he was aware, there is no blockage for Diane standing as an MP. So I would want to see her be able to carry on if she wants to carry on. She's dealt with the investigation. There's a line under that investigation, just like with mine. Then you move on.
Yeah. Final question: are we going to see any more defections?
Who knows?
Oh, blimey, watch this space. Angela Rayner, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Thank you. So that was Angela Rayner. During the campaign, we hope to hear from a senior member of the Conservative Party too on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and go right now and find electoral dysfunction. Send me a picture of your political pet. Speak soon. Trust in politics is broken, so can we get UK politics working again?
That was the last time we were happy. 2012.
I'm Beth Rigby, Sky's political editor. Join me every week with Labour's Jess Phillips and Conservative peer Ruth Davidson for some electoral dysfunction.
This idea of nuance has completely left politics.
Yeah. Together we'll focus on the policies that could deliver political satisfaction. Follow Electoral Dysfunction wherever you get your podcasts.